Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 365th meeting of the BRTB. This meeting is being recorded. If anybody online should experience any difficulties during the meeting, please send a message in the chat box. I would ask that BRTB members turn on their cameras during roll call for attendance as well as for voting. And I ask Rebecca to start the roll call to determine the member participation today.
Annapolis, Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County,
Here.
Carroll County,
Here.
Harford County,
Here.
Howard County,
Here.
Queen Anne's County,
Here.
MDOT, RTA of Central Maryland,
Here.
MDOT, MTA,
Here.
Maryland Department of Environment,
Here.
Maryland Department of Planning, FHWA. Did I miss anyone? Thank you.
Okay, our first item is to approve the minutes from the May meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? And can I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Queen Anne's County will second.
Great. With that, are there any edits from the members? If not, we now vote on the approval of the minutes. When your name is read, please indicate yay or nay.
Annapolis, Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County,
Yay.
Carroll County,
Yay.
Harford County,
Yay.
Howard County,
Yay.
Queen Anne's County,
Yay.
MDOT, RTA of Central Maryland.
Yay.
Thank you.
With that, the minutes are approved. Next, we're going to go to our public participation opportunity when we offer the public a chance to speak to the board. If anybody has comments on any of the action items, please wait for the item to be discussed. If anybody wishes to address the board at this time, please indicate so in the chat box.
Mr. Chair, there was no one who sent any comments before the meeting, and currently there is no one requesting to speak in the chat box.
Okay. We now ask for the report on public involvement activity from Monica.
Good morning. Do we have the report to pull up for folks? Okay, there we are. Great. So, good morning. So we have the Bikeable Baltimore Region project that's going on. We're really excited about that. This is a project we launched a few weeks ago, and we've been holding meetings throughout the community and the different jurisdictions. Those meetings continue through June 27th, and online comments are open through July 26th. And basically, this is a project where we're working to identify a bike network that's safe and comfortable for everyone. We want to make sure that our communities are connected, and we want to make it easier for folks to get connected to transit, school, work, parks, and more. So we want to know what folks think about the what would make a good bicycle network and to comment on that. So we put together a project page at publicinput.com/bike-balto-region, and you can visit that to get involved, take our survey, check out a story map, all of those good kinds of things. We hope folks will participate, and that runs again through July 26th. We recently closed several comment periods. One was on the PRG, Patapsco Regional Greenway Stony Run Phase 2 project. So in January, we launched the project, and then in May, we went back to folks and asked about 4 different options for where the trail could go. We had over 130 people share, nearly 100 comments, and over 1,000 survey responses were received. So what folks said was 89% of folks surveyed supported the project. Folks weighed in on the different alignments. So 68% supported the stream alignment and 60% opposed the race road option. The main concerns that folks had were where the trail would go. They were concerned about safety and separation from traffic, minimizing the number of on-road segments that are there, concerns about high-speed traffic, things like that. They want to make sure it's connected to transit in key locations and the environment's preserved. Folks were also concerned about who would maintain the trail once it's built. So those are all the comments. We've put together an infographic, as you can see on the right. All of the survey results are posted on the project website at publicinput.com/PRG. And we're working to review all of the comments, and hopefully, I believe next week, we'll have responses to those comments so folks will know what we did with their input that they shared. And all of those comments will be posted to that website. So we also had a recent comment period on the TIP, which was a $4.5 billion transportation program that we put together for the next 4 years. So we advertised the plan, and we had over 105,000 impressions, which was social media ads and other ads that we posted, paid and unpaid. So we reached over 105,000 folks. Of those folks, we had 2,170 people visit our project page, and 209 folks participated. So those folks generated 250 comments, and of those were 182 project ideas or needs that folks said that they felt like were missing from the TIP. So the 3 key themes that folks had to say, we analyzed the different comments, the 250 some comments, and the 3 key themes that folks had to say was they wanted the BRTB to consider reducing highway expansion and shift more funding to transit. There's increasing transit capacity, as well as adding more bike and pedestrian projects. And there is concern about roadway safety and a need to reduce traffic fatalities. 70%, we surveyed folks about their satisfaction with the transportation system, and 70% expressed dissatisfaction and feel that there are significant issues with the transportation system that negatively impacts their daily life and needs to be addressed urgently. Only 5% of those folks reported being satisfied with the transportation infrastructure meeting their basic needs. So 57% of the folks that we surveyed felt that the TIP is not effective, and 42% feel it is somewhat effective. There was only 1% of folks that we surveyed felt that it was very effective. In terms of the project ideas that came in, again, we had over 180 project ideas or transportation needs that people mentioned, and we've put together those projects on an interactive GIS map that can be seen, And the ideas can also be seen on a map and the public input project page. We will be sharing all of these comments with you, the board members, and staff are also taking a look at those so we can see what we can incorporate and what we will do with those comments that we received. So if folks are interested, you can check out the comments and the results at publicinput.com/BRTB-tip. And that's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Monica. Now we're going to turn to Dan, who will present the June Technical Committee report.
Hi, good morning. Dan Janicek from MDOT. Concerning Resolution 2425 on today's agenda, MDOT requested to amend 4 projects already in the FY 24-27 TIP. The reason for the amendments is due to MDA having pre-award authority. Excuse me. When a grant is actually obligated, funds must be shifted to the year of obligation, and this request was recommended to move to the BRTB today for consideration. At our meeting on June 4th, MDTA did not have a request to amend the TIP for the Francis Scott Key Bridge rebuild, so subsequent to that meeting, materials were readied and sent out to the technical committee for review and approval via email. So the technical committee members send in support emails for the second amendment today, the resolution request from the Maryland Department of Transportation, Maryland Department of Transportation Authority. So it's written a little strangely there, to update the funding for this Francis Scott Key Bridge demolition. Ms. Claire Stewart reported for the nominating committee at the June 4th Technical Committee meeting that the slate of officers for FY25 is MDOT for the chair of the Tech Committee, and Baltimore County will continue as vice chair. This will be a second one-year term for those positions, and the vote will take place at the July meeting. On June 4th, there was a closed session. The long-range transportation plan scenario was discussed, and staff provided an overview of the proposed RFP for the long-range transportation plan scenario planning, analysis of long-term risks and opportunities task. Scenario categories are anticipated to include transportation investment and policy decisions, housing and land use, technology, demographic shifts, and environmental impacts. The purpose of this task is to identify strategies and policies that appear to work well across multiple scenarios, along with trade-offs associated with the scenarios. After a discussion of tasks and deliverables, the Tech Committee recommended that RFP move forward. The other discussion during the closed session was a larger needs assessment called the Baltimore Region Transportation Needs Assessment Task. So this RFP and project will gather information on how the region's transportation system works and how it doesn't work for people living in the Baltimore region. Identifying the kinds of barriers people face in getting to places and accessing what they will need will help the BRTB and, of course, the agencies understand how to plan for a more inclusive and responsive system. After discussion of tasks and deliverables, the Tech Committee recommended that RFP move forward for the needs assessment. And that's the report from the June 4th Technical Committee. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dan. We now move to action items. And Todd, could you please introduce the first action item?
Good morning, everyone. Today, the BRTB is being asked to consider Resolution 24-25 to consider a request from the Maryland Department of Transportation, MTA, to update funding for 4 projects in the 2024 to 2027 Transportation Improvement Program. I now ask Mr. Keith Kucharek to introduce the resolution. Keith?
Good morning, and thank you, Todd. As Todd mentioned, in Resolution 24-25, MDOT MTA is requesting to amend 4 projects in the 2024 to 2027 TIP. The 4 projects include the bus and paratransit vehicle overhaul and replacement project, the small urban transit systems capital assistance project, the metro and light rail rolling stock project, and the ride sharing in the Baltimore region project. This amendment was presented to the technical committee on June 4th and was recommended to be sent to the BRTB as presented. Additionally, the ICG has reviewed these projects and has determined all 4 to be exempt according to the conformity rule. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Albert Guiney Engel from MTA to present the details of the project. Albert?
Thank you, Keith. Put my camera on. And I will I'll preface this by saying that I am sitting in for Jamie Richardson, who is on leave. So I'll present the details as I know them and I'm aware of them, but I'm not fully versed in all of the intricacies of all these projects. So the basic gist of this is that we have pre-award authority. And so when we obligate a grant from federal government, we need to have the funds shown in the year that the funds are obligated. And so what these actions are is to obligate grants that we have previously received in the correct year of obligation. So to start, the bus and paratransit overhaul and replacement. This is for purchase of replacement buses, mobility vehicles, and various items for buses. And so there's 5339, 5307, and CMAQ funding in here. Obviously, this maintains the existing fleet, which is essential to providing quality, safe, and reliable service to our passengers. And the protective barriers and air cleaners were items that we were considered essential during COVID. So this is going to increase the FY 2024 allocation for 5307 by 6.4 million, for CMAQ by 42.3 million, for 5339 by 2.7 million, and state match is 13.6 million. And this is a continuous project, continuously procuring new buses to maintain a fleet that is in a state of good repair. You flip to the next slide. For Metro and Light Rail rolling stock overhaul and replacement. So this project includes the midlife overhaul of light rail vehicles, replacement of the Metro fleet, and other general system improvements. So this is obligating 5307 money and CMAQ money. The Metro fleet is obviously over 30 years old and needed replacement. And the light rail overhaul is addressing some of the safety and performance issues that we've seen and enhancing the comfort of our passengers. Next slide. So this is going to increase the 5307 funding by 11.6 million, CMAQ funding by 20 million, and the state match of 9.5 million. Metro fleet replacement continues to progress, anticipating the first new vehicle on the system in the summer of next year. The CBD interlocking Metro track work are completed, and nearly all the light rail vehicles have completed their overhauls, and the rest are anticipated to be completed by the middle of this summer. Next slide. Moving to small urban transit systems, the capital project for bus replacement, small vehicles, other capital costs for Carroll County, Anne Arundel County, Baltimore County, Howard County, and City of Annapolis. So this is 5307 funding for FY 2024, or grants for FY 2024, and 5339 grants for 22, 23, and 24. Obviously, these capital funding is essential for the lots to meet their local needs. This will increase 5307 funding by 58,000, 5339 funding by 7.5 million, and 2.1 million in state match. And similar to MTA, this is a continuous project with the lots procuring buses and small vehicles and other capital equipment as they need to. And then the ride sharing project, this is support for local ride share programs in Central Maryland region. So Anne Arundel County, Harford County, Howard County, BMC, and Baltimore City, including the Guaranteed Ride Home program. This is CMAQ for fiscal years 22, 23, and 24. And the benefit promoting the sort of occupants, alternatives to single occupant vehicles. So mass transit, carpools, van pools. And so this is an increase in allocation by 1.4 million in CMAQ funds. And these are also ongoing programs for those jurisdictions. So that's it. As I mentioned, I'm sitting in for Jamie, who's out on leave. I can answer any questions that you may have, but if to the best of my ability. But I can't guarantee I'll be able to speak to all the details.
See, with that, Mr. Chair, we ask the board to consider resolution 24-25.
Yes, I now ask for a member to approve the resolution and second. I mean, for to move it, and I need a second.
Anne Arundel County motions to approve.
Hartford County seconds.
All right, with that, does any of the BRTB members have questions or comments on this resolution? Hearing none, we now ask for members of the public if they have any questions or comments to the resolutions, and a reminder for those online to please indicate so in the chat box.
Mr. Chair, currently there is no one requesting to speak in the chat box.
Okay, we now proceed to vote. Again, with cameras on, when Rebecca reads your name, please indicate yay or nay.
Annapolis, Anne Arundel County,
Yay.
Baltimore. Thank you. Baltimore City, Baltimore County,
Yay.
Carroll County,
Yay.
Hartford County,
Yay.
Howard County,
Yay.
Queen Anne's County,
Yay.
MDOT,
Yay.
RTA of Central Maryland.
Yay.
Thank you.
With that, the resolution is passed. And Todd, can we please go to the next action item?
Certainly. Today, the BRTB is being asked to consider Resolution 24-26. This resolution is a request from the Maryland Transportation Authority to update the funding for the Francis Scott Key Bridge demolition. I'm going to ask Mr. Keith Gutcharg to introduce the resolution. Keith?
Thanks again, Todd. As Todd mentioned in Resolution 24-26, the Maryland Transportation Authority is requesting to amend one project in the FY24 to 27 TIP, Francis Scott Key Bridge Reconstruction Project. This amendment, as was mentioned earlier, was presented to the technical committee through an email survey and was subsequently recommended to be sent to BRTB as presented. Additionally, the ICG has not reviewed this amendment, but the project was previously reviewed in May for a previous amendment, and it was considered exempt according to the conformity rule. And there have been no changes to the scope since the May meeting. So we're going to present it to the ICG, but for now, we're going to consider this still an exempt project. So this amendment is adding funding only, no scope changes, as I mentioned, and Mr. Carl Chamberlain from MDTA will present the details of the projects. Carl?
Thank you, everybody. As a reminder, my name is Carl Chamberlain. I'm the Deputy Director of Planning and Program Development here at Maryland Transportation Authority. So we were just here last month for our first amendment to the TIP, and we're back a month later. So I don't have, I do have this sort of the same slides that I presented the last time, after I talk about why we're coming back here today. So I can go through the project again. But I don't have any really new, a ton of new information, but I did want to just, make it clear, why we're coming back again a month later. So there's a couple things. So first, we're adding planning and construction dollars to fiscal year 2025. One of the reasons for this is this project is fluid, as you can imagine. We're learning new things every day about the project, and the way in which we thought we were going to be doing demo originally for the remaining stable structure changed a little bit, and we thought maybe we could do it a little bit faster. And so we wanted to make sure we had the money in there, for right now, rather than waiting for the next TIP that's being approved next month. So we added planning and construction dollars for fiscal 2025. The other thing from a NEPA perspective was that we needed to make sure that we had funding for the subsequent phase of NEPA in order to get or a subsequent phase of the project in order to get that NEPA signature from FHWA, and we're on track for getting sign off for the NEPA in the middle of July. So that's coming right up. Actually, the Fed, FHWA, and the agencies have a draft that they're reviewing right now, and hoping to get those comments back pretty soon. So that's why we're here again a month later. And again, I'll just kind of run through these. Again, this is the same information I presented last time, but just as like a reminder, or for anybody that that might not have been at the meeting for last month. So as everybody, again, is probably aware, it's been pretty active in the news. In March 26th of this year, a cargo ship leaving the Port of Baltimore struck the Key Bridge, causing it to collapse. And just for context, the bridge was built in March 23rd, or was open to traffic March 23rd, 1977, 1.7 mile long Key Bridge over the Patapsco River. So the intent here, and a lot of this has been done. So, you know, we're moving really fast on this project, and we're really proud of where this project has gotten to so far. So we wanted to clear the Fort McHenry Channel to open marine vessel traffic to the Port of Baltimore, which was done, and then remove unstable and dangerous debris from the river. Again, that was done. As part of that, the full channel was open. We plan to remove the remaining structure, and that's part of why we wanted to add some construction funding to the current tip, to make sure that we could get started on that early if that was if that opportunity was afforded to us. And then of course the big piece of this, which is going to be rebuilding the Key Bridge. And so yeah, so go right on. The project goals are to restore functionality and transportation connectivity, revitalize the surrounding areas, stimulate economic activity, and attract investment, and breathe new life into the communities that were impacted by that bridge collapse. The rebuild parameters, this is where we don't have a lot of detail quite yet, but these are the things that we're confident in saying at this point of the project, which is that the new Key Bridge will be higher to accommodate taller ships entering the port. It will be constructed in the same location and on approximately the same alignment. It will stay primarily within the state's existing right-of-way. It will include 4 lanes, 2 per direction, including shoulders, which is the same. The 4-lane cross-section is the same cross-section that was on the bridge previously. You know, we will be adding things like shoulders to bring it up to current design standards, which were different back in the 70s. And then, of course, because of what happened, we plan to include larger pier protection in the water, of course, to protect the future bridge. Quick timeline. So right immediately after the bridge fell, you know, we got all of our agency partners together and started doing regular coordination. We were doing sort of daily and weekly coordination right at the beginning. That's slowed down a little bit, but we are still in regular coordination weekly with most of our agency partners. We restored the use of the federal channel, and earlier this month, we received our U.S. Coast Guard clearance determination, or I think it was called the preliminary navigational clearance determination. That was the official terminology for that. So we received that from the Coast Guard. We plan to have our NEPA approval in the middle of July. And again, I mentioned that earlier, what the status of that is. That's on track. We expect to get the remaining permits and authorizations for both the demolition of the existing structure and the rebuild of the new structure. It's going to be sort of 2 different permitting packages, again, because we want to be able to start the demolition early if possible. So all the demolition permits, I believe, have been submitted at this point, and we're on track to be submitting the rebuild permits pretty quickly. And then again, we don't have an exact schedule yet, but we do expect to be demolishing the remaining structure in the fall of this year. And part of the reason we're putting some funding in right now is to make sure that we can get started early if we have a team on board that can get started early. And then, yeah, you know, we'll be doing future construction next year. And that's all I got. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. I may not have the answer just because, again, of how fluid the process is. And then the only other thing I'll just mention again before I answer any questions is just you know, what I can and cannot say about the project. It may be impacted by the fact that we are in an open procurement right now. So the RFP for the progressive design build is out there on the street. The due date, I don't remember what the official due date. It's actually coming up for those submittals. But again, so if there's something that I can't answer, it might just be because you know, we need to be careful about what we say and don't say while we're in the middle of a procurement. So that's it. Yeah, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the project again, to the best of my ability.
With that, we now ask the board to consider resolution 24-26.
Great. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Carl. I now ask for a member to move for approval of this resolution and a second.
Anne Arundel County motions to approve.
Howard County seconds it.
With that, does any of the members have any questions or comments on the resolution? Hearing none, once again, we ask for any members that are online, any of the public that is online or have any questions, please indicate in the chat box.
Mr. Chair, currently there is no one requesting to speak in the chat box.
Okay, we will now proceed with the vote. Again, with cameras on, when Rebecca reads your name, please indicate yay or nay.
Annapolis, Anne Arundel County,
Yay.
Baltimore City, Baltimore County,
Yay.
Carroll County,
Yay.
Carroll County,
Yay.
Harford County,
Yay.
Howard County,
Yay.
Queen Anne's County,
Yay.
MDOT,
Yay.
RTA of Central Maryland.
Yay.
Thank you.
Great. The resolution has passed, and now I ask Todd, please go to the next item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. At the May 28th BRTB meeting, the nominating committee recommended a slate of officers for fiscal year 2025. Those included Baltimore County as chair and Howard County as vice chair. We'd now like to call for any nominations from the floor. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, we now would like to move for approval for the slate of officers for their second year term. I ask a member to move and then second.
Anne Arundel County motions to approve.
Harford County seconds.
Thank you. With Anne Arundel County moving and Harford County seconding, we'd now like to go to a roll call vote. Rebecca, please do roll call for the election of officers for fiscal year 2025.
Annapolis, Anne Arundel County,
Yay.
Baltimore City, Baltimore County,
Yay.
Carroll County,
Yay.
Harford County,
Yay.
Howard County,
Yay.
Queen Anne's County,
Yay.
MDOT,
Yay.
and RTA of Central Maryland.
Yay.
Thank you.
The slate has been approved, and we look forward to working with the BRTB members for another year. For our next item, I would ask Todd to introduce the speaker.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and board members, while he is able to pull up his presentation, hopefully, today, Mr. Ken Joe from the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments has joined us to share information from the 2023 Washington-Baltimore Regional Air Passenger Survey, which includes the BWI Airport. Again, thank you, Mr. Joe, for attending and doing the presentation, and I'll turn it over to you. We can see your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Todd. So my name is Ken Joe. I am pleased to have the opportunity to present some of our recent findings from our 2023 Washington-Baltimore Regional Air Passenger Survey, which was conducted at our 3 regional airports, BWI, Washington Dulles, and Reagan Washington National Airport. So I'll start by providing a brief overview of the survey. I'll share some numbers on our latest employment trends, and then we'll get to the heart of the presentation, focusing on general findings on passenger characteristics, ground access, preferences, and behavior, and then conclude with next steps. The 2023 Regional Air Passenger Survey was conducted last October at our 3 regional airports under the oversight of our Transportation Planning Board Aviation Technical Subcommittee. The survey fielding period consisted of 2 weeks of data collection, followed by a 1-week resurvey period, and obtained a representative sample of flights, including both domestic and international destinations. And this survey has been historically conducted every 2 years since 2005, and this survey provides data which is essential for our airport systems planning processes. And prior to 2023, our last survey was conducted in 2019, which was before the pandemic. 2021 was skipped because of the pandemic impacts of air travel. This survey was an at-gate interview survey, so interviewers approached departing air passengers at the gates for pre-selected flights to take the survey. In 2023, we implemented new survey methods, transitioning from a paper-based survey to a fully web-based survey, where passengers can complete the survey on their mobile devices by scanning a QR code. And to test these new survey methods, a pre-test was conducted at Dulles Airport in April of last year. So this presentation highlights general findings from the air passenger survey drawn from the weighted data, focusing on air passenger characteristics, ground access, and preferences and behavior. So looking at this table, we surveyed a total of 486 flights across the 3 airports. We received about 9,600 responses. The revenue passenger response rate for all 3 airports was just under 20%, which is the proportion of passengers on the flights that were selected that provided responses to the survey over the number of revenue passengers. But the intercept passenger response rate, which I would consider to be a more accurate measure of the actual proportion of passengers who were intercepted at the gates who completed the survey, was 52%, which is a much higher percentage than the revenue passenger response rate. So now let's take a look at emplanements. So emplanements across the region has steadily increased from 2017 to 2023 with about 421,000 increase since 2019. Local originations decreased slightly from 80 to 79% of total emplanements in 2023 compared with 2019. By each airport in 2023, DCA had the largest share of local originations at 87%, followed by BWI and IAD. Compared with 2019, local originations decreased slightly at BWI and DCA while increasing at IAD. And by each airport in 2023, BWI had the largest number of emplanements, followed by DCA and IAD. Now let's look at emplanement share by airport. So emplanements across the 3 airports are nearly evenly split in thirds. Since 2019, BWI's total emplanement share fell slightly, while DCA's total emplanement share slightly increased, and IAD's emplanement share slightly decreased. Now let's look at some general findings focusing on passenger characteristics. Looking at the share of resident versus non-resident passengers across the region, the share of non-resident passengers remains larger than the share of resident passengers, although the share of resident passengers has been slowly increasing. In 2023, the largest share of non-resident passengers were reported at DCA, about 2/3 non-resident passengers. Just over half of BWI passengers were non-resident, and just under half of IAD passengers were non-resident passengers. Since 2019, there was not much change in the share of resident versus non-resident passengers except for IAD, where the share of resident passengers increased from 45 to 54%. Now, looking at the age distribution of passengers in the region, the age distribution of passengers are almost evenly split between the 25 to 34, 35 to 44, and 45 to 54 categories at around 20%. The youngest and oldest age groups comprise smaller proportions of passengers. Now let's look at the breakdown by trip purpose, which shows categories of business trip purposes shown in orange, and non-business trip purposes that are shown in purple. On the right of this chart are the categories that comprise the business and non-business trip purposes. So across the region, the share of business-related travel, which includes business related to federal government, state and local government, and other business, has steadily declined since 2017, with a 5% drop from 2019 to 2023. And this could reflect a drop in post-pandemic business travel. Conversely, the share of non-business travel, including vacation, personal or family affairs, and school and student-related travel, has steadily increased since 2017. The drop in business-related travel is reflected for all three airports. However, the drop in business-related travel was sharpest for IAD, with a 10% drop in business-related travel from 2019 to 2023. And the decline in business travel were also observed for DCA and BWI to a lesser degree. And business-related travel remains highest for DCA, comprising nearly 40% of travel, while only 1/4 of passengers at BWI and IAD traveled for business. Now, this chart breaks down trip purpose by the individual categories, and we can observe a similar trend in the decline in business travel across nearly all categories, as well as the increase in non-business related travel. Now let's take a look at the breakdown of passengers by household income. Region-wide, for all airports, the share of travelers earning more than $200,000 a year were highest at 34%, comprising about 1/3 of all passengers. Considering that the median income of the Washington region is about $100,000, air travelers in the region tend to be more affluent, with nearly 3/4 of passengers with household incomes with more than $100,000. And this pattern appears to hold for all three airports, although BWI had a notably higher share of passengers with household incomes less than $100,000 compared with DCA and IAD. And to summarize some of the key findings for passengers characteristics, we observed that non-resident passengers continue to outnumber resident passengers, although the share of resident passengers has been gradually increasing. We also observed that the youngest and oldest age groups represent smaller proportions of passengers compared with other age groups. But probably the biggest finding from this is that business travel has declined, while non-business travel have increased across the region and at all airports. And finally, more than 1/3 of passengers in the region earn more than $200,000 annually, indicating that air travelers tend to be more affluent, with nearly 3/4 having household incomes exceeding $100,000. Now let's look at some general findings focusing on ground access. This chart shows where passengers started their ground access trips to the airport for the entire region, shown by the pie chart on the left, and passenger trip origins for each airport for 2017, 2019, and 2023. So region-wide, the majority of air passengers started their ground trip to the airport from their private residence, followed by hotel and motel. And together they comprise over 90% of all trip origins. Comparing between airports, DCA had a notably lower share of trips starting at a private residence and a higher share of trips originating at a hotel or motel than BWI and IAD, reflecting the higher share of business travelers at DCA. And looking at the temporal trends for each airport, the share of passenger trips starting at a hotel or motel decreased for IAD, which likely reflects a drop in business travelers at IAD from 2019 to 2023. Now, looking at passenger mode access across the region, how it has changed since 2017, we could see that private cars remains the dominant access mode to the airports, comprising just under half of all trips to the airport, which increased slightly from 2019. While transportation network companies, Uber and Lyft, has steadily increased since 2017, now comprising 1/4 of all trips. Conversely, taxi usage has declined from 11% to 5% since 2017. And the share of trips by transit has remained steady at around 8% since 2017. Now let's look at passenger mode access for each of the airports in 2023. So among passenger travel modes, the share of passengers who travel to the airport by private car was highest at BWI at 58%, followed by IAD at 49%, and it was lowest for DCA at 30%. And the share of passengers who use TNCs were highest at DCA at 37%, followed by IAD and BWI at 17%. And the share of passengers who use transit were significantly higher for DCA compared with IAD and BWI. Looking at passenger mode access by airport and how it has changed from 2017 to 2023 for each of the airports, we can see that TNC usage has steadily increased for all airports since 2017, while taxi usage has declined, especially since 2019. Private car usage dropped from 2017 to 2019, but rebounded in 2023, most notably at DCA. Rental car usage slightly dropped at BWI, remained steady at DCA, and dropped at IAD. And transit usage remained steady at BWI, slightly dropped at DCA, and increased at IAD. Now looking at passenger mode access by resident status, whether they are residents in the region or non-residents, comparing 2019 with 2023, these charts show passenger mode access by resident status. For residents, the largest share by far travel to the airport by private car, followed by TNC. Private car use remains steady, while TNC share notably increased from 22% to 29%, and transit usage slightly increased from 6 to 8%. For non-residents, there were a much higher share of modes other than private car, such as rental car, taxi, TNC, and transit use. Since 2019, private car and rental car usage slightly dropped, while TNC usage sharply increased. These charts show the breakdown for air passenger travel mode to all airports in 2023 for trips originating from home versus trips originating from places other than home. For airport trips originating from home, just over half of all airport passengers travel to the airport by private car, and just over a quarter traveled by Uber or Lyft. Transit trips to the airport comprise only 6% of all trips. For airport trips originating from places other than home, the largest proportion of trips to the airport were by TNC, followed by rental car, transit, and private car. And non-home trips to the airport had a much higher share of TNC, taxi, transit, rental car, and airport bus trips compared with home trips to the airport. These charts show the change in passenger mode access originating from home and non-home locations from 2019 to 2023. For airport trips originating from home, the share of trips by private car and taxi decreased, while the share of trips by TNC and transit increased. For trips originating from non-home locations, the share of trips by taxi and hotel, motel, courtesy bus decreased, while the share of trips by TNC and transit increased. These charts show the breakdown of air passenger mode, travel mode to all airports for business travel compared with non-business travel. And for business travel, the largest share of airport passengers travel to the airport by TNC, and nearly 1/3 travel by private car, followed by rental car, taxi, and transit. For non-business travel, the largest share travel was by private car, followed by TNC, rental car, and transit. Therefore, non-business travel had a much higher share of private car trips and transit trips, and a much lower share of TNC trips compared with business travel. These charts show the change in passenger mode access for business and non-business air travel from 2019 to 2023. For business travel, the share of trips by TNC increased, while the share of trips by rental car and taxi decreased. Private car and transit remained relatively steady. For non-business travel, the share of trips by TNC, transit, and rental car increased, while the share of trips by private car and taxi decreased. This shows the share of passengers who are dropped off at the airport curbside. Overall, DCA had the highest share of passengers that were dropped off, followed by IAD and BWI. Across the region, the share of airport trip drop-offs declined from 3/4 to about 2/3 of airport trips, and the pattern of decline was mirrored at all three airports, with the steepest decline at IAD. So to summarize the key findings on ground access, we observed that the primary origins for air passengers were private residences, followed by hotels and motels, which comprised over 90% of all trip origins. While private cars remained a primary mode of access, we've observed an increase in the rise of TNC usage at all airports, which now comprise 1/4 of all airport trips. Private cars were the preferred travel mode for residents, while TNCs were the top choice for non-residents. For business trips, we've observed an increase in TNC usage, while rental car and taxi trips decreased, while for non-business trips, TNC, transit, and rental car usage increased, while private car and taxi trips decreased. In airport drop-offs, decreased from 3/4 to about 2/3 of all airport trips. Now, finally, we want to share some final set of questions focusing on preferences and behavior. These two charts show the top reasons for why passengers chose to fly out of their airport. The left chart is a breakdown for the region in 2019. The right chart is a breakdown for the region in 2023. And the largest share of passengers chose closest airport as the top reason for choosing their airport, although this share has increased since 2019. And other top reasons cited by air passengers include more convenient flight times and less expensive airfare. Now let's look at each of the individual airports and why those passengers chose to fly out of their airport. I'm assuming that you're probably most interested in BWI's passengers. So let's start with them first. So we could see that 82% of BWI's passengers chose BWI as their preferred first choice airport. And nearly half of BWI passengers chose to fly out of BWI because it was their closest airport. And other top reasons for choosing BWI include less expensive airfare, and more convenient flight times. Now let's take a look at DCA passengers. 87% of DCA passengers chose DCA as their preferred first choice airport. This is the highest among all airports. Just over half of DCA passengers chose to fly out of DCA because it was the closest airport. Other top reasons include more convenient flight times and less expensive airfare. And finally, for IAD passengers, 72% of IAD passengers chose IAD as their preferred first choice airport. So 35% of IAD passengers chose to fly out of IAD because it was their closest airport. This chart shows the reason for choosing the mode of access to the airport, and across the region, convenience was cited as the top reason, whose share increased from 2019 to 2023. And this trend is reflected at each airport as well. After convenience, cost and reliability were the second and third top reasons. A notably higher share of BWI passengers indicated reliability as the reason for choosing their mode of access compared with the other airports in 2023. Now let's look at airport spending, specifically how much air passengers spent on concessions in the entire region and for each airport. In the entire region shown in the pie chart, nearly half of all passengers spent $1 to $24, and 1/4 of all passengers did not spend any money on concessions. While the pattern of spending was relatively similar across all airports, the share of passengers who spent more than $100 was twice as large at IAD compared with BWI and DCA. For this survey, specifically in 2023, we asked some new questions about typical mode of travel to the airport before the pandemic and their expected mode of travel in the post-pandemic new normal period. Across the region, the share of passengers who indicated private or rented car as their preferred mode of travel decreased slightly. And these trends were also reflected for each airport. However, the share of passengers who indicated taxi and ride-hail increased slightly from pre to post-pandemic, and the share of passengers taking public transit declined from pre to post-pandemic for BWI and DCA, while increased for IAD, which could be explained by the recent extension of the Silver Line to Dulles Airport. The survey also included new questions about airport security lanes used by air passengers at each of the airports. For the entire region, just over half of all passengers used the regular security lanes. Just over a third used the TSA pre-check lanes, followed by clear and priority. Comparing between airports, the higher share of DCA passengers used pre-check and clear compared with IAD and BWI, which may suggest a higher share of business travelers at DCA. Over half of DCA passengers used an expedited security lane. So to summarize the general findings for preferences and behavior, we saw the largest share of air passengers chose the airport because it was the closest airport, especially for DCA passengers. Convenience is cited as the top reason for choosing their mode of access, followed by cost and reliability. Nearly half of all passengers at least spent a little bit, under $25 on concessions. A quarter did not spend any on concessions. From pre to post-pandemic, the share of passengers who typically traveled to the airport by private or rented car decreased slightly, while the share of passengers who typically use taxi or ride-hail increased in the region. And nearly half of all passengers, used an expedited security lane. Just over 1/3 used TSA pre-check, followed by clear and priority. And the majority of DCA passengers used an expedited security lane, which is the highest across all airports. So I know that was a lot of slides, a lot of charts and tables. So if you do have any questions, or if you don't, feel free to follow up with me afterwards. So to conclude the presentation, our next steps will be to complete our general findings report. So the report following from this presentation, which will include some enhanced visualizations. We're also performing geographic analyses to produce our geographic findings report, which will provide ground trip information by aviation analysis zones and are used to prepare updated ground access forecasts. I'd like to thank our COG TPB staff, as well as our airport partners, particularly our partners at the Maryland Aviation Administration, Sean Ames and Clevin Clark, who played an instrumental role in planning for this survey. And also I'd like to thank my collaborators on this project who helped me to put together this presentation, Olga Perez and Suraj Fujini. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Hearing no questions, we'd like to thank you, Ken, for the presentation. And at this point, I'd ask, is there any other business that needs to come before the BRTB?
No, Mr. Chair, there is no business from the BMC staff, so you can proceed to closing.
Hearing none, I call for a vote to close the meeting. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
The next meeting of the BRTB will be held in person on July 23rd. And I thank everybody.
Thank you very much, everyone.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.